Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rude Sports Talk. My name is Ryan Rude. Rude Sports Talk, you can get the raw, uncut, uncensored analysis of today's and vintage sports. Um, this morning on my podcast that is available, which is also Rude Sports Talk, it's available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, and Anchor. Um, I talked about LaMarcus Aldridge and his career. I wish him the best in whatever he decides to do after basketball. I hope he gets well as far as gets his heart problem fixed. He had an irregular heartbeat, he had to retire. It's been a good career. Um, Very good player. Um, was pretty much anything that you want to power forward for the most part. I mean, he could post up, he could shoot, he could defend, he could rebound. I mean, the Marcus Aldridge was a pretty good player. Just one of those players that one of those other really good players that just didn't win the championship, even though it looked like he could have this year if he was able to stay healthy, but he wasn't. It happens sometimes, and I wish him the best. But I talked about him. There were a lot of good players around that time that Aldridge came in the league and either came just a little bit before him, a little after him. You know, guys like Derrick Rose, guys like Steph Curry, James Harden after him, and before him you had Um, players like LeBron, players like Wade, Chris Bosh, and another part of that historic 2003 draft was Carmelo Anthony. And taking a look at his career, because people typically know how great guys like LeBron and Chris Bosh were. A lot of people know how great Dwight Howard was in Orlando, able to get to the NBA Finals, an MVP candidate for a lot of those years in Orlando. And you got Carmelo Anthony, who, in my opinion, is still playing at a pretty decent level right now. But how good was his entire career? Because the consensus about Melo is that everybody knows that he can put the ball in the basket. That has never really been a question of Carmelo Anthony. Um, because when you look at his career, you look at his career averages. For a career, he averages 23 points a game. He's 11th all time in po- career points per game. So he can put the ball in the basket with the best of them. You don't get to that top 11 on the verge of being a top 10 all time scorer without being able to put the ball in the basket. But what else could Carmelo Anthony do to help his team win? Well, you got rebounds. Um, Pretty consistent rebound. With the exception of this current season, he's averaged at least 5 rebounds per game. For a career, he averages 6.4 rebounds a game. So that's almost 6.5 rebounds. That's pretty good. So you got his 23 points, you got his 6.5 rebounds. Um, his assist game never really developed. He never really developed as a playmaker, which is one of the knocks on Carmelo Anthony. At least that's been one of my criticisms. When you look at the old, and it may have held him from being on that upper echelon of players even in the 2003 draft, such as LeBron and Dwayne Wade, they were able to distribute the ball to their teammates and make other players better. Carmelo Anthony never really did that. Not saying that he didn't make his team better with his scoring, but he didn't make people around him better, in my opinion. Even if other players were able to get their stats, it didn't always translate to team success in the playoffs. Carmelo Anthony was always, which he was very good at getting to. He was good, very good at getting to the playoffs as well as the free throw line too. Because for a career, he averages 6.5 free throw attempts per game, 5 made free throws. And the only reason that number is not higher is because of really his last 4 seasons. Of course, he's not the player that he once was. Every player hits that point in their career where they hit their peak and start to decline. And of course, we're seeing a decline in Carmelo, who is still playing pretty well this season, as he did last season. Last season, he was 15 points a game. So that tells me that Carmelo Anthony still, if he's able to average 13, if you're able to average in that 13 to 16 points a game in a season, that means that you are a legitimate threat to score 25 on any given night. He doesn't do it every night like he used to, as he scored more than 25 points per game in 9 seasons. That's pretty impressive. Not a lot of players can do this. So Carmelo Anthony, and I know a lot of people talk about Kevin Durant, who was another player that came in around that time. He was drafted in 2007, and obviously has gone on to have a great career himself. Um, Before Durant, it was Carmelo. I mean, when you look at the way that both of them play, you look at the way that Carmelo Anthony played in his prime, and you look at the way that Kevin Durant plays. I'm just talking about scoring the basketball. That is, um, it's identical. It's identical. Both can shoot very well. Both can drive very well. Both are unstoppable. Kevin Durant coming off an Achilles injury. There are just certain players that are put on this earth to put the ball in the basket. And Carmelo Anthony does it or has done it throughout his career better than most players that have ever played. A lot of people don't really realize that because of his lack of accolades. And that's why winning is very important. He has been able to get to the playoffs throughout his career. I mean, he's been a consistent playoff player. Even his rookie season in Denver, he was able, at the age of 19, 20 years old, he played all 82 games this season. I didn't even realize that. And he was able to get that team to the playoffs because the Denver Nuggets sucked ass before Carmelo got drafted to him. Because they drafted some sorry son bitches before him. I tell you that, like Nikolaus Skidisvili or whatever his name is, he went fifth, I think, the year before Carmelo. Um, I don't know what the hell Denver was thinking. Maybe they were trying to save their money, or I don't know. Maybe they was smoking the good weed before it got legalized out there in Colorado. Who knows? But before Carmelo and Anthony got there, they and he was able in his rookie season to average 21 points a game along with 6 rebounds. That's what Carmelo Anthony has been able to do for you throughout his career. You put him on the court, 25 points, 10 rebounds. He get that any night. And back then, he'd get that damn near every night. Just a great score and a terrific rebounder as well. Like I say, when you average 6 rebounds per game, you're doing your team a service. They don't call him a bull down there for nothing. He plays bully. He played bully ball back in his day. He still does it sometimes, just not at the level that he used to. But your greatness, a lot of times, is gonna get summarized by your ability to win. And that's the one knock on Carmelo. He was not able to win. Um, he's only been out of the playoff. I mean, excuse me, he's only been out of the first round a handful of times. He got out of the first round in 2009. When Chauncey Billups was over there, that was a pretty good fit for both players. Because I remember when that trade happened, Allen Iverson going to the Pistons, Chauncey Billups going to the Nuggets. I felt like at the time I thought it was a good trade for both teams because I felt like the one thing that the Pistons had been lacking, if anything, at the time was a guy that could give them 30 points every night. And I thought that that's what Allen Iverson was going to be able to do for them. And I felt like what the Nuggets were lacking at the time was a floor general. And I thought Chauncey Billups was going to be able to do that for the Nuggets, which he did. They were able to get the number 2 seed in the West that year. Were able to get to the Western Conference Finals, which is the furthest that Carmelo has been in his career. I believe that was also his first time. Yes, that was his first time out of the first round of the playoffs. So you that was a pretty good season for Carmelo. His numbers were down a tad bit from the previous season, but not by very much. He averaged 3 less points that season, but he played. That was the best defense I've seen Carmelo Anthony play in that 2009 playoffs. Um, he played some pretty good defense, even against Kobe Bryant. Now, Kobe Bryant is going to be Kobe Bryant. He's going to get his points. He was always going to get his points. And one of the damn things you would do about it, just make him work a little bit. And Kobe took on the challenge of guarding Carmelo Anthony, which once again, another guy who's going to get his points regardless. You just got to make it as hard on him as possible. And that was probably Carmelo's best season, not statistically, but as far as success, they lost that series 4-2 to the Lakers in '09, the '09 Western Conference Finals, and you know the game 6 that the Lakers won, they didn't win by very much. So Denver competed, and so did Carmelo, of course, in that series. But other than that, another good playoff run he had was in 2013. And that was the year they lost in the Eastern semis. That's when he was with the Knicks. They lost in the Eastern semis to the Indiana Pacers, which was capped out by blocked by Roy Hibbert to steal that series for the Pacers. But that was a pretty good run for Carmelo. Um, Other than that, he hasn't had very many successful playoff runs. Those are the two that stick out. So he's only been out of the first round twice. And that puts a damper on his career achievements. Um, because when you win, let's just be honest, when you win, people remember you. Like the prime example is the championship that Dirk Nowitzki got. There's a reason why a lot of times he's talked about more than a player like Tracy McGrady. And Tracy McGrady was a better player than Nowitzki, but Dirk Nowitzki. But winning gets you noticed. Winning gets you talked about. Winning shoots you up those lists of all-time greats. And Dirk, that one championship, just that one championship in Dallas. And it's also about who they beat too. They beat the Miami Heat, who were the heavy favorite in this series. Heavy favorites. And he still gets talked about because of that championship. That means a lot. You can't devalue winning. That it makes a big difference. That's why a player like Sidney Moncrief, who's a very good player in the '80s for the Milwaukee Bucks, he doesn't get talked about as much as Larry Bird or even players like Danny Ainge. Sometimes Dennis Johnson, he didn't win. He was successful in the playoffs. No, don't get me wrong. One of the few star players that was able to beat Jordan before Jordan started winning championships. So, there's no word, but he doesn't get talked about a lot because he didn't win. Same thing with a lot of players. And to me, that is the one knock on Carmelo's career, the winning. I talked about his assists or his playmaking ability in general. And he can make plays. Putting the ball in the basket is a play. That's a play. But making plays for his teammates. Um, his career high in assists is 4 assists a game, a little over 4 assists a game. Um, had he been able to get that number up to like, I think KD has had a couple of seasons. He's averaged like 6 assists a game. See, that's the difference between a player like Kevin Durant and a player like Carmelo Anthony. That the ability to make plays for your teammates leads to winning. And people can say all they want to about Kevin Durant going to Golden State. I know I have my opinion about that, but nonetheless, he was still able to get to the NBA Finals before he went to Golden State. He was able to win a MVP before he went to Golden State. And it's the ability to make others around you better. And Kevin Durant, like him or not, he has that ability to make other players around him better. Look at Russell Westbrook will be a prime example. Look at Westbrook's success rate since Kevin Durant is not on his team anymore. That shows you the value of playmaking and making people on your team better. Not saying that I mean, obviously he's done some great historic things without Durant, but winning is not one of those historic things that he's been able to do. Keep that in mind. Playmaking, making plays for your teammates is a key component to winning. That's why him and Allen Iverson were not able to win in Denver. And it wasn't just their two faults, it's the way the team was constructed. You had Iverson, who was the best playmaker on the team, um, which would be okay if other players could make plays, if Iverson didn't have to be so ball dominant. If Carmelo Anthony, let's just say that was Kevin Durant with Allen Iverson on that team, I guarantee you they would have. I'm not gonna say go to the finals with that team because that West was tough. In the 2008 season, Denver won 50 games and with an eighth seed in the playoffs. Got swept by the Lakers. The West was tough. Golden State won 48 games this season and missed the playoffs. But once again, I can see plays that where Kevin Durant is the ball handler making plays for Allen Iverson. Carmelo Anthony was not able to do that. So what you had was a whole bunch of talented players, not just them two. You had um, J.R. Smith, and you had other players on the team as well who needed the ball to succeed, with the exception of Marcus Camby. He was the best defender on that team by far, their defensive anchor. But that means shit if the rest of the team can't defend. You know, even though he was able to get defensive player of the year out of that by somehow, some way. And that's the real knock for me on Carmelo Anthony's career. It's not so much about the play. The playmaking is secondary. It's a secondary criticism to him not winning a lot. It's not all about winning the championship either. Because you look at a player like Reggie Miller, you look at a player like Karl Malone, John Stockton. You have other greats that were not able to win championships. Elgin Baylor, if he had stayed for the rest of the season, his last season, he would have won the title. He retired 9 games to that season where the Lakers won the 72 championship with Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. But even if Jerry West didn't win that championship, he at least had been to the finals multiple times. Now, I don't think that finals appearances, you don't get a constellation trophy for it, but it does show that you are you a level above players who have never been there. Because it still takes a special type of player to get a team to the NBA Finals. You know, and the people I named, they're Hall of Famers, first ballot Hall of Famers, and Sometimes that finals trip can be the difference between you being a first ballot Hall of Fame and you not. And then all those players had playoff success. Even if they didn't get to the finals a particular year, they still had playoff success. They weren't consistently being eliminated in the first round like Carmelo Anthony was, although he did do better than certain players like a Tracy McGrady, who was not able to get out of the first round on the court, that is, until the last season of his career. So, but outside of those two criticisms of Carmelo Anthony, it's been one hell of a career. He's one of the greatest scorers to ever step foot on the NBA court, y'all. He is one of the greatest scorers to ever step foot on the NBA court. Anything that you want, any way that you want a player, put the ball in the basket. Carmelo Anthony can do it for you. His post game, especially in his prime, even now, but especially in his prime, was lethal. He was kind of like James Worthy down there. He had the total package of a score. Honestly, I would put Carmelo Anthony. I'm not gonna put him above everybody, but I would put him. I feel safe when it comes to scoring. I feel safe putting him up against just about anybody. No, not a lot of players who are able to score 62 points, score 9 threes, and where you see it all the time now. But this is back in an era where 3 point the 3 point shot was not taken as much as it is now. So be able to get 9 threes his prime in those years is almost the equivalent of some of these guys getting 11 or 12 threes, you know. And he's had games where I think he's had a couple of games, he's had like 20 rebounds. You know, he could defend when he wanted to. I never thought that Carmelo, I thought in his he was kind of a liability on defense in his first 5 or 6 seasons, but he got better on defense. No, he didn't. Let me rephrase that. He picked and chose. He had to have the right team. He had to have a guy that was a defensive player that was gonna hold him accountable, that didn't give a damn about his star status, because he was among one of the elite players in the NBA at one point. But could have been an MVP talent if that playmaking had been better. Because he had seasons where his team had a good enough record for him to be an MVP. It's just that playmaking. Um, or if you not the best playmaker like Dirk in 2007, for instance, he wasn't the best playmaker. He didn't make other players better by passing them the ball or getting them in position where they could score. That is, but he was able to get the MVP off of success, even though they lost in the first round against the Warriors that year. His team won 67 games. So if you're not gonna be able to consistently be a playmaker for your teammates, you your team need to be winning a lot of games when you get MVP. Because his numbers were MVP numbers. You averaging shit like 28-7 or 28-8. Those are MVP numbers. Field goal percentage is pretty good throughout his career. For a guy taking the shots that he takes, like he is taking 45% for a career, I take that. I take that any day of the week. Because when you take a variety of different type of shots, the field goal percentage is not going to be like that of a guy like Shaquille O'Neal, Wilt Chamberlain, guys like that who, even players like Dwayne Wade and even Michael Jordan, who kind of stuck. They did it very well. They did it great, but they were able to average 50%, 48% because they were not taking a whole lot of long range jump shots. They took them, but not as many. They stuck in the paint and closer to the basket than players like Carmelo Anthony and Kobe Bryant. So, there's also something to consider. But like I say, I still enjoy watching Carmelo Anthony when he plays. I Oh, I'm not gonna get the same player that I got 10 years ago, but he's still fun to watch when he plays. He doesn't play as many minutes, of course. Um, just a great player, one of the greatest scorers to ever play. Um, but my question is he's gonna be in the Hall of Fame more than likely. Is he a first ballot Hall of Fame? Is what I want to know. And where does he rank to you all on when you talk about the greatest small forwards to ever play? Because obviously we got your LeBrons, your Larry Birds, your Kevin Durant, your Scottie Pimpens. You have some great small forwards to play the game of basketball. John Havlicek sometimes even plays small forward. Um, just depending on your perception of what position he played. These are some of the greatest small forwards to ever play. And where does Carmelo Anthony fit into that mix? I think he's a top 10 small forward. Possibly top five, maybe, off of his scoring alone. That's how lethal of a scorer he was in his prime. But please subscribe, please comment, please let me know y'all's opinion about Carmelo Anthony. How good was his career? Please subscribe, please comment. Please follow me on Twitter. I will have my tag in the description. And please continue to listen. I appreciate you all who have been listening to my podcast. I will be coming out with more content. I will have a variety of content, and I will be discussing. I will be soon discussing topics outside of sports. So look out for that. I'll let you know when it's coming, when it gets close. My name is Ryan Wood, and I'm gonna holler at you.